You're sitting at your desk, staring at your computer screen, and that familiar wave washes over you again. Your eyelids feel heavy, your focus blurs, and despite having had a full night's sleep, your body seems to be begging you to just close your eyes for a moment. You reach for another coffee, your third today, hoping to push through this inexplicable fatigue that's become your constant companion. But what if this persistent sleepiness isn't just a physical condition? What if, as the great philosopher Immanuel Kant might suggest, it's actually your soul trying to communicate something profound to you, a message about how you've been living disconnected from your deeper purpose and authentic self? This constant tiredness that follows you throughout your day might actually be a form of spiritual resistance. Your inner self pushing back against a life that doesn't align with your true nature. Today, I'm going to share with you a perspective that could completely transform how you understand your fatigue. And by the end of this video, you'll have a philosophical framework to not only make sense of your experience, but also practical tools to begin addressing the root cause, not just the symptoms. I want you to know that this exhaustion you feel is real. It's not just in your head, and you're not alone in experiencing it. In our modern society, we're constantly told that tiredness is simply a sign that we're not managing our time well enough, not sleeping correctly, or perhaps not taking the right supplements. We're taught to push through, to caffeinate, to optimize our sleep cycles, treating our bodies like machines that just need the right inputs to function properly. But there's a completely different lens through which we can view this experience. Kant, in his philosophical work, spoke of the noumenal world, the reality beyond what our physical senses can perceive, and the phenomenal world, the reality we experience through our senses. What if your persistent fatigue is actually a message from that deeper, noumenal reality? A signal that there's a fundamental misalignment between how you're living in the phenomenal world and what your soul is yearning for in the noumenal realm. This brings us to what I call the categorical imperative of the soul. The concept that our inner being has its own moral law that demands we live authentically in accordance with our true nature. When we violate this imperative, our soul creates resistance in the form of physical symptoms, with persistent tiredness being one of the most common manifestations. Think of it like this. Imagine your soul as a compass that always points toward your true north, your authentic purpose and values. When you're living in alignment with that direction, you experience a natural flow of energy and vitality. But when you're moving against it, your soul must exert a constant force to try to redirect you. That force manifests as fatigue, your energy being drained in this internal tug-of-war between where you're heading and where your soul knows you should be going. Let me illustrate this with a metaphor that Kant might appreciate. Imagine you're swimming in a river. When you swim with the current in the direction the water naturally flows, the journey feels effortless, even energizing. But when you try to swim against the current, every movement requires tremendous effort, and exhaustion quickly sets in. Many of us are living lives that are swimming against our soul's natural current, and the fatigue we feel is the inevitable result of this resistance. Now, let's explore the 5 forms of spiritual misalignment that commonly manifest as persistent fatigue, each representing a different way we might be violating the categorical imperative of our soul. The first type is purpose misalignment. This manifests when your daily activities do not reflect your deeper calling or values. You might be working in a career that society deems successful or that provides financial security, but it fails to engage your authentic gifts or fulfill your sense of meaning. The psychological mechanism at work here is what Kant might call a violation of your kingdom of ends. You're treating yourself merely as a means to external ends like status or security, rather than honoring your inherent worth and purpose. The wisdom here is that true energy flows when your work is an expression of your authentic self, not just a means of survival or social acceptance. The second type is boundary violation. This occurs when you consistently override your own needs and limits to meet the expectations or demands of others. You may find yourself saying yes when your body is screaming no, pushing beyond your natural rhythms to accommodate external pressures. Psychologically, this represents a fracture in what Kant would call your autonomy of will. You're allowing external forces to dictate your choices rather than acting from your own rational agency. The message here is that respecting your own boundaries is not selfish, but necessary for maintaining the integrity of your being. The third form is truth suppression. This happens when you're living in ways that contradict your deeper knowing or intuition. Perhaps you're in relationships that don't feel right, holding beliefs that no longer resonate, or participating in systems that violate your sense of justice. The psychological mechanism here involves what Kant might term a contradiction in will. Your actions are misaligned with your internal truth, creating a constant cognitive dissonance that drains your vital energy. The wisdom is that energy flows freely only when your outer life is congruent with your inner truth. The fourth type is creative blockage. This emerges when you're not expressing your unique creative energy in the world. Your soul has a natural impulse to create, to contribute, to bring something new into being that reflects your distinct perspective. When this impulse is stifled, whether by fear, practicality, or social conditioning, a significant portion of your life force becomes trapped. In Kantian terms, you're failing to fulfill your duty to develop your talents, which he considered a moral imperative. The message is that creative expression isn't a luxury, but a vital channel for your soul's energy. The fifth and final form is perception disconnection. This occurs when you've become detached from direct, present experience, living primarily in conceptual thought rather than embodied awareness. Your attention is constantly pulled into worries about the future or ruminations about the past, preventing you from fully inhabiting the present moment. Psychologically, this represents a split between what Kant would call the understanding, your conceptual mind, and sensibility, your direct experience, preventing the integration necessary for wholeness. The wisdom here is that energy is most available when you're fully present to the life that's unfolding right now. What's fascinating is that all 5 of these misalignments can be understood through Kant's concept of the transcendental unity of apperception, his term for the self-consciousness that unifies all our experiences. When there's a fracture in this unity, when how we're living fails to integrate our deeper knowing, purpose, boundaries, creative expression, or present awareness, our soul signals this disunity through fatigue. So I'm curious, which of these 5 misalignments resonates most with your experience? Take a moment to reflect on where you might be swimming against your soul's current. I'd love to hear your insights in the comments below. You could start with, I realize now that my fatigue might be connected to Realign once, and share what this perspective has illuminated for you. Your sharing not only deepens your own awareness, but also helps others who are experiencing similar struggles to feel less alone. There's something profoundly healing about recognizing that what we thought was just our personal burden is actually a common human experience, a signal from our soul that's worthy of our attention. Now that we've identified these 5 forms of misalignment, let's talk about practical steps you can take to begin restoring harmony between your daily life and your soul's imperatives. This isn't about quick fixes or surface-level solutions. It's about a profound reorientation that honors Kant's notion that human dignity comes from living in accordance with universal moral principles that you recognize from within. The first step is what I call contemplative inquiry. This involves creating regular time for deep reflection, where you ask yourself questions that bypass your habitual thinking and access your deeper knowing. Questions like, what activities give me a sense of timelessness and flow? When do I feel most alive and energized? What truth am I avoiding in my life right now? The key is to approach these questions with what Kant called disinterested contemplation, without agenda or expectation, and to listen patiently for the answers that emerge not from your thinking mind, but from your deeper wisdom. As you practice this inquiry, pay particular attention to your physical sensations. Notice when your body feels expansive, light, and energized, versus when it feels contracted, heavy, and drained. Your body is not separate from your soul in this process. It's the messenger, communicating through sensations what your soul is trying to tell you about alignment or misalignment. The second practice is categorical alignment. This involves examining your daily choices and activities through the lens of Kant's categorical imperative. Act only according to that maxim whereby you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. In our context, ask yourself, am I living in a way that honors the universal principles of my authentic being? Are my actions expressions of my true self, or merely reactions to external pressures and expectations? Begin making adjustments to bring your phenomenal life, your daily activities, into greater harmony with your noumenal reality, your soul's imperatives. This alignment process isn't about dramatic overnight changes that can be unsustainable. Rather, it's about mindful, incremental shifts that gradually redirect the course of your life toward greater authenticity. Remember Kant's emphasis on duty and commitment. This is not just about doing what feels good in the moment, but about honoring the deeper principles that you recognize as true. The third approach is what I term creative integration. This involves finding ways to express and embody your unique gifts and perspectives in your daily life, even within existing constraints. If you can't immediately change your job or major life circumstances, look for smaller ways to infuse your authentic creative energy into what you do. Kant believed that developing our talents is a moral duty, not just for our own fulfillment, but as a contribution to the universal good. As you engage in these practices, you may notice that your relationship with fatigue begins to change. Rather than seeing it as merely an obstacle to overcome or ignore, you can receive it as valuable information, a compassionate signal from your deeper self about where realignment is needed. This perspective transforms fatigue from an enemy to be fought into a messenger to be honored. Here's where we encounter what I call the transcendental paradox of fatigue. The more you fight against or try to eliminate tiredness through external means alone, more caffeine, better sleep hacks, energy supplements, the more persistent it often becomes. But when you turn toward the fatigue with curiosity and respect for what it might be communicating, you begin a process that can ultimately lead to its resolution. This paradox reflects Kant's understanding that true freedom doesn't come from avoiding limitations or difficulties, but from recognizing and working within necessary conditions while making choices aligned with your rational nature. In this case, the necessary condition is the feedback system of your soul, which uses fatigue to guide you toward greater alignment. Think of it this way. Fatigue is not the problem to be solved, but the solution already in progress. It's your soul's way of saying, something needs to change, and initiating the process of that change. When you resist or ignore this message, you inadvertently amplify it. But when you receive and respond to it with willing attention, you join forces with your soul's natural healing momentum. This perspective elevates fatigue from a merely physical symptom to what Kant might call a transcendental condition, a necessary aspect of the structure of human experience that points beyond itself to deeper realities. Your tiredness is not just about your body. It's about your whole being seeking integration and wholeness. The transformation happens when you recognize that the very fatigue that seems to be holding you back is actually the energy of your authentic self, trying to break through the constraints of a misaligned life. It's not the absence of energy, but energy moving in a new direction, away from what no longer serves your true nature and toward what does. Let me share something that might surprise you. This understanding of fatigue as spiritual realignment isn't just philosophical speculation. It resonates with what modern neuroscience is discovering about energy regulation in the human system. Our brains are constantly making predictions about what's coming next and allocating energy accordingly. When we're living in ways that contradict our deeper values or intuitions, our nervous system must expend tremendous resources managing this internal conflict. Researchers have identified that persistent internal conflict activates our sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight response, keeping us in a state of low-grade stress that steadily drains our energy reserves. Meanwhile, living in alignment with our authentic values and purpose activates the parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest state, where energy can be restored and properly distributed. What Kant intuited philosophically about the importance of living according to universal principles recognized by our rational nature, neuroscience now confirms physiologically. Alignment between our actions and our deeper values creates conditions for optimal energy flow and vitality. But here's where our modern culture often leads us astray. We live in a society that values productivity and achievement above all else. A world that Kant might critique for treating human beings as means rather than ends in themselves. We're encouraged to override our natural rhythms, ignore our body's signals, and push through fatigue in service of external goals. We celebrate those who hustle and grind, equating exhaustion with virtue and rest with weakness. This cultural context stands in stark contrast to traditional wisdom across many cultures and throughout history. Ancient philosophies from both East and West recognize the importance of living in harmony with natural cycles and inner wisdom. Kant himself, though known for his rigorous work ethic, maintained strict daily rhythms and honored the limitations of his embodied nature. Today, we're rediscovering what these traditions always knew: that true vitality comes not from conquering or overriding our human limitations, but from living wisely within them. Not from ignoring the signals of fatigue, but from receiving them as valuable guidance from our deeper intelligence. This perspective offers something revolutionary in our exhausted modern context, not just another method for managing symptoms, but a fundamental reframe that transforms how we understand and relate to our experience of tiredness. It invites us to see fatigue not as a deficiency to be corrected, but as a communication to be heeded, a call from our soul to realign with our authentic nature and purpose. I want to take a moment here to connect with those of you who have been resonating with this message. If you've found value in this perspective and would like to continue exploring these philosophical and practical approaches to living with greater alignment and vitality, I invite you to join our community by subscribing to this channel. This is a space where we dive deep into the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern challenges, exploring how timeless philosophical insights can transform our everyday experiences. The journey of realignment isn't a quick fix, but an ongoing exploration, and having companions on the path makes all the difference. By subscribing, you'll receive regular content that offers both profound insights and practical tools for living with greater authenticity and energy. This isn't about chasing endless self-improvement, but about remembering who you truly are and allowing your life to flow from that recognition. What Kant understood so profoundly is that there are two realms of human experience: the phenomenal world that we perceive through our senses, and the noumenal world of deeper reality that transcends sensory experience. Modern science is beginning to bridge these realms, showing how our subjective experiences and deeper values directly impact our neurological and physiological functioning. The fatigue you experience isn't just all in your head. It's a real physiological state influenced by the alignment or misalignment between how you're living and who you truly are. Recent research in the field of psychoneuroimmunology, the study of how our thoughts and emotions affect our nervous and immune systems, has shown that internal conflict and suppression of authentic expression create measurable changes in our hormonal balance, inflammatory markers, and even gene expression. What we might call soul misalignment has very real, quantifiable effects on our physical energy systems. So, as we come full circle in our exploration, I want to remind you that the fatigue you've been experiencing isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that something is right with you. It means that your inner compass is working, alerting you when you've veered off course from your authentic path. What if the very tiredness that seems to be preventing you from living fully is actually an invitation to discover what living fully truly means for you? From this perspective, persistent fatigue transforms from an obstacle into a gateway. It's not keeping you from your true life, it's guiding you toward it. Like Kant's moral law within, it speaks with a quiet but persistent voice that won't be silenced until it's heard. The question is not how to overcome fatigue, but how to listen to what it's telling you about the life that's waiting to be lived through you. So, I leave you with this invitation. See your fatigue not as your enemy, but as your guide. Not as a limitation, but as a doorway. Trust that as you follow its guidance toward greater authenticity and alignment, the energy you need for your journey will arise naturally from within, like a river finding its true course and flowing with renewed vigor toward the sea that has been calling it all along.